Welcome to Arcade Beat, the show where we listen to soundtracks from video games and analyze them to figure out what makes them work, not just as a piece of music, but as a part of something larger. Ever wonder why the music to Mario 64 sounds exotic yet familiar at the same time? Or why you can't get that riff from Mega Man 2 out of your head? Arcade Beat has you covered.
Nobuo Uematsu was very big into the let me just do one really, really, really good phrase over and over again.
That's what I like.
Yeah.
I mean, really, it's like, it's the catchy bits that people remember, so
Sure.
why bother writing 4.5 more minutes of song when they're only going to remember
one really good
Billy
hook.
Joel, I told you, Billy Joel and Elton John, both. The best advice they ever gave me was don't overlook or avoid the obvious. It's the obvious for a good reason. It's probably the right thing to do.
Yep.
So don't make it mundane and predictable, but don't try to go out of your way to make something different when it doesn't need to be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Particularly when you're talking about dumb people who play video games.
Obviously.
Right.
Hey, everybody.
Hey! Oh, sorry, didn't know it was recording.
Sorry, didn't notice you there.
Oh, hi.
What's up?
When did you get here?
Sorry. Oops.
We're
Here
doing
we are again.
We're doing Arcade Beat.
Hey,
It's
everybody.
it's a new one.
It's a new one.
It's a new one.
I thought it was a rerun.
Oh, okay.
Oh. What's a rerun?
We could play Earth. We could do Earthbound again.
Today, which...
You have 2 TV sets?
He's kidding. Nobody has 2 televisions.
Oh man, we're doing Final Fantasy IV. Nobuo Uematsu, the composer.
Oh, by the way, that's Alden.
Hi, I'm Alden.
I'm Drew.
Oh, I'm Sally. Hi.
And I'm Phil.
As is tradition.
As is tradition.
As is tradition.
But actually, you guys get a little more equal on the mic. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, let's buddy up.
All right.
Buddy up.
But yeah, no, it's good.
Be comfortable.
I'm sorry, continue with Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're listening, we're doing Final Fantasy IV. It's Nobuo Uematsu. What I would consider sort of his, I don't want to say, definitely not his magnum opus, but this is like what made him define him. Like this is where Nobuo found what does the Nobuo sound like.
And this is also one of the first game that sort of did away with the generic characters being able to be any class type of thing, and the way that a character played was tied to that character specifically. So all of the characters had a lot more personality. So that also, from a gameplay perspective, this game sort of defined the future of the Final Fantasy series as well.
Yeah, this is a very defining moment in Final Fantasy at large. You know, specifically talking about the music. You know, you'll see things in this game. Like, yes, there are a couple of like the crystal themes in every Final Fantasy, regardless, but you'll see a couple of things that we touch on, like thematically, that persists to Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, 10, 12. Even now in 15, we're still seeing some of those themes, even though Nobuo is not doing the soundtrack for it. So it becomes Nobuo Uematsu music almost becomes the trope of the Final Fantasy series.
Yeah.
So and this is cool because this is where we get that good start up. Huh?
That and Sid.
Yeah, that
Yes.
and Sid.
Sid, Nobuo, Sid, and Chocobos.
Yes, it's like the 3 things that you see in every Final Fantasy game. So, I guess without further ado, we'll just dive
Yeah,
in.
let's dive right in.
Are you prepared?
There we go.
I'm re-
All right.
Notes.
Cool.
I think Sully's got something that he wants to say.
Oh, I was just, you were grinning at me, and I was.
I looked over and Sully was just like,
I do have some stuff to say, but like I wasn't sure. Do you want me to just jump in?
yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Alright.
start us off.
Point.
All right. Well, I just think it's really appropriate that it even has a prelude. I don't have a whole lot to say on the actual content of the prelude, but I kind of lied to you when I was talking to you yesterday. I am back to having a thing.
Okay,
unlike last
all right.
time, but I have two things that they kind of work together. I can make it one thing if you want me to.
No, I'm good with the two things idea. Let's go in a new direction.
We're evolving the genre.
So, I think this soundtrack was evolving the genre. I think that it's appropriate that there's a prelude because I think he wrote this the way that you would write a narrative piece of classical music. This soundtrack was written like a ballet or an opera.
Yeah.
And so the fact that it has a prelude that kind of isn't really repeated content later in the game is very much so like the beginning of like a ballet, for example.
Yeah, it's interesting with the idea of the prelude. So this is called like the crystal theme. It's called the prelude. It's not called the main theme of Final Fantasy, or the main theme of even Final Fantasy IV, because that's a separate track. And indeed, this is the first thing that you hear when you you blow in your cartridge, you pop it in the Super Nintendo, you flick the on, and that's the first thing that you hear. Before you press start. The next thing that you hear is still not the main theme. The next thing that you hear after that is still not the main thing. You have like a significant chunk of game before you get to the main theme. And it's sort of like if you're ever watching a movie and like you see like, you know, coming from black screen, some dude's running towards the camera. You don't know what's going on. Like stuff happens, action happens, and then all of a sudden like the title, like the camera raises up to the sky and then you see in the sky the title of the movie, like Iron Man or something like that. They do that in this game. And like this is really good because it serves that purpose of like uplifting you. It's got that very glistening like fantasy kind of thing.
Sounds
like,
kind of like a harp.
yeah, you're expecting like fairies here. And it does that without being the all right, let's go on an adventure, which it has to because you don't know that you're going on an adventure yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like it
You don't know what you're doing yet, really.
Yeah, exactly.
You have an idea, obviously, because you've been through Final Fantasy 1 through 3.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's
you were
worthwhile
right through one, yeah.
to note that this was probably the first Final Fantasy game that a lot of Western audiences played. Brief history for anybody who doesn't know: Final Fantasy 1 was released in the U.S. on the NES. Very limited release, didn't get a whole lot of... not a lot of people bought it, was relatively unknown at the time. And then Final Fantasy 2 and 3 did not get released in the US until much later. And then Final Fantasy 4 was originally released in the US as Final Fantasy 2 on the Super Nintendo. And this game is sort of what really started bringing the Final Fantasy games over here. It did much better. It was very popular, very well received.
Skipped 5.
Yeah, and then they skipped 5 because I don't really know why they did that one.
Because the main character's name was Butts.
That's a problem.
You got to give me something to work with here.
That could be a problem.
Yeah. So there were definitely people who were familiar with the Final Fantasy franchise, certainly in Japan at this point, who were kind of knew what they were getting into. But like you were saying, there a lot of Western audience probably didn't know what they were getting into at the time.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, this crystal theme is not new. There's no new content in what we just listened to. It's been like that since Final Fantasy 1. Granted, it sounds better in the fact that it's not just NES beeps and boops, but the chord structure, the arpeggios, even that ba, 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 that's all been in the crystal theme thus far. Yeah. Again, that being said, like it fits, even though it's like wasn't actually written for this game.
Right.
Yeah.
And that it clearly plagiarizes the song, "Oh, my love, my darling, I hunger for your touch, my love." So it's the melody line is a direct borrow from a classic love song.
The copyright laws in Japan are much more lax.
And even though it's varied enough, though, so that if for some reason you would pursue that, the melody line varies enough that it goes through 2/3 of the melody line and then conveniently changes.
Yes.
So that it does. But it's cool, and that's fine. As they say, great writers write. I mean, good writers write, great writers steal. And that's,
I feel like we're gonna need next time we do this. We're gonna need Kevin here for the legal and copyright.
Cool.
All right. Well, unless anyone else has anything about the prologue, the next track is Red Wings.
Cool. Very military.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very dramatic opening
Yeah.
to the game.
It's a lot of things.
So I guess a bit of context to what's happening at this point in the game. So you play as Cecil the Dark Knight, who is the captain of the Red Wings, which is a military
He scores a lot
force.
of goals.
Yes.
But team captain.
Captain Hockey, I get it. I'm not completely in the dark when it comes to sports. Not completely. But so the setting is it's heavily inspired by like medieval fantasy, but there's also like airships and sort of high fantasy magic and that kind of stuff.
Medieval meets like a steampunk.
Yeah,
meets fairies.
Yeah, it is very typical for like Final Fantasy as a franchise, but as far as like generic fantasy goes, it's kind of a different direction. But
I was gonna say, like, I'll tell you, it's very, very Lord of the Rings. It's very, you have your elves, you have your dwarves, you have your, evil empire, you have your lava areas, blah 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 blah. And there is like that idea of mechanics and machinery that sort of, I guess, maybe replaces the. Like the big things that they're riding on when they were going to go fight Mordor or whatever. Yeah. They have that. Let's take all of Nobuo's career within Final Fantasy into account here. One of the things I like doing is likening songs in this game to songs in the future of the franchise. If you think about it, think Final Fantasy VII, Rufus's theme. If you think Final Fantasy VIII, the Seed theme. Now you have these are all like militaristic themes with like the
he likes marching.
He loves that, but he also does
stuff.
Dissonance in that. That's what I wanted to highlight.
Yeah.
When you have that he does that constantly. This is something that becomes a Nobuo thing, both within this game and within future games. Like when you hear the Seed theme, or when you hear Rufus's theme, if it's what everybody in the game world perceives as the good guys actually being the bad guys veiled underneath, and you as the player know it, he hints at that through a militaristic song with dissonance.
Yeah. I literally have it written down. Has those tension brass chords that Uematsu loves.
Yeah.
I wrote that in my notes for this track. I was just like,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No,
that's
I just thought that was like, yeah, that is super correct. Like,
yeah. That is
and on the topic of like Uematsu reusing themes in later games, this is very much reminds me of the bombing mission, which is the opening to Final Fantasy VII.
That's it. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. It was to the point where like I had to go and listen to that song after this to make sure that it didn't straight reuse any parts of this song. But the beginning of Final Fantasy VII is very similar to the beginning of this one in that it just sort of drops you right into this like very tense militaristic action thing. What's happening right now in the story in Final Fantasy IV is you're Cecil, the captain of the Red Wings, who has been ordered to invade a neighboring country of Mysidia and capture their water crystal. And Cecil has some misgivings about this mission because they weren't provoked and yada yada, but you know, he's in the military, it's his job to follow orders. So you show up and instead of just like peacefully trying to find a solution or whatever, the entire town just gets completely destroyed. And Cecil, as he saves one young girl named Rydia, and they're the sole survivors of this mission. And Cecil,
rough.
Yeah.
and Cecil wakes
that's
up
actually-
like on a shoreline.
That's actually a separate encounter. What you're describing now, Rydia is not till later.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to look this up.
Yeah.
I just read the plot synopsis of Final Fantasy IV.
Yeah, all right.
to brush up on this.
Let me fill you in. So you go in and you kill the water. Or you get the water crystal, and you do so by like killing all the people in Mysidia. Yes, that. Then you take the water crystal back to the Kingdom of Baron.
Mm-hmm.
After he gets, and this is going to be several songs later in the playlist, but after he gets, yelled at by the king for questioning orders, then he gets the package to take to Rydia's
Oh,
town.
that's right. I got a little ahead of myself.
You did.
Jumping
You got
ahead.
excited.
Yeah. I got excited. But yeah, so that all is the beginning of Final Fantasy IV.
Yes. Yes, very much so.
I think that all of that happens before the main theme.
No.
No?
A lot of it does.
A lot
A
of
lot
it.
of it does. Everything except the package and Rydia and all
Okay.
that.
All right.
So this is a great example of thing number 2, or probably more accurately, thing 1A.
Okay.
One of the things that he does best while writing this stuff to make it very like opera or ballet like is that he's really good at using leitmotif, which is a really fancy sounding word because it's German for using a theme to represent a person or a place or an action or like a recurring thing of some sort. It helps you to like set the mood a lot and to understand what's going to happen, and this is sort of the I guess the main melody from that is Cecil's leitmotif, so to speak. Which I want to do the next track before I dive really into that because they relate. But honestly, I think this soundtrack is just masterful at that because it not just gives like character themes, but it uses them and reuses them in other ways to show a character's influence on something. It gives themes to places, like towns have themes and stuff like that, but it also integrates lines that reference influence of a character on a place, and the degree to which it's obvious is the degree to which that person, a character, has influenced the place. They have themes that represent, which I'll cut myself off there because the next track is my quintessential example of this, I think.
All right.
Cool.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and listen to Theme of Love.
Nice.
Do you mind if I
Go.
Yeah,
continue?
go
Okay.
Hop right in.
All right. So, there is a lot of subtly borrowed content from the Red Wing track in this, because this is also in a way a Cecil theme. This is the representative track for Cecil and Rose's relationship.
Yes.
And the fact that it relates to a very different track as a very different side of Cecil, I guess, is really nice because they do work together very well. And yes,
No, when you're done, I've got something.
oh, okay. But this is an example of leitmotif used to describe a relationship and not a single person, which is why I think it's really good that it also relates to the track that's basically Cecil's theme, so to speak. But it's I guess very subtle in the way in the reuse of material, but I like it. It works really well. It's a lot of little things that make this just like nitpicky perfect.
And it introduces a much more complex arrangement in terms of it doesn't come across as real video gamey and just like get the job done. It all of a sudden starts introducing a lot more of an emotional aspect and a lot more from a creative standpoint in terms of how the modulations work and what it sounds like. It gets to be a lot more sophisticated in its delivery of emotion and music.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you actually mentioned, specifically complexity and sophistication with this one. When we talk about, like, we've done 4 of these now, and now on all of the 3 previous ones, we're like, oh yeah, look at how complex it is. This is dense. It's got this. It's got this. It's got a flute being used as like some other style instrument. This one had a harp and some strings and a flute. Like, it's 3. Yeah, but the 3 things.
The melodic and harmonic content was way more complex.
Way more complex and way more sophisticated. This is the composer. This is a composer who was classically educated. This is somebody who was classically educated in music composition. Versus the previous guys who, yes, they may have had some training in it, but they were band geeks like us. They were like people who knew how to play a guitar. Oh yeah,
nerd.
All right, I'm a band geek. Sorry.
But like, those are the guys who like pick up a guitar or sit down at the piano and want to plink away and try to write a song for a video game. This guy, this just goes to show. Like, I've got 3 different timbres, but I did so much more with it. And that is, keep that in the back of your head, because that's a thing that happens throughout all of the Uematsu stuff. I'm gonna say throughout all the Uematsu stuff, a lot. And I should condense it. Be like, that's my one thing. I got a one thing.
Taos. Throughout all Uematsu stuff.
All right, Taos.
That's your Taos.
Say Taos.
That's my Taos. Got it.
All right. So, real quick, I just want you touched on something very important that I want to sort of elaborate on a little bit.
Okay.
How both the Red Wings theme and Theme of Love are both sort of Cecil's theme in a way. They're both very different sides of Cecil. That is like the core concept of this game. The main theme of this game is about like duality and redemption.
I don't like killing. Why am I a Black Knight? Ah.
Yeah. So Cecil starts the game as a Dark Knight. He's a soldier, but he doesn't really like his job. He doesn't like killing people. He's very emotionally torn up about it inside. And the army starts ordering him to do very questionable things. And the music plays into that very heavily, because like this track and Red Wings are very juxtaposed from a lot of standpoints, like from the theme and everything. And that is just like Cecil's character to a T.
One more fun fact about this track, if we're done with all the substantial stuff.
Yes.
It's actually been integrated into the 6th grade music curriculum in Japan.
I also had that on my notes. So thank you for bringing that up.
I just thought that was fun.
Wow, that's cool.
That's
was that integrated way back when this game was originated?
I think it was like early
recently?
2000s.
Okay, so quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Cool. All right, I think we good. We want to jet into the next one. So
This is the prologue to the main theme.
this is the prologue, and if the Final Fantasy numbering convention wasn't confusing enough, this is the prologue to Final Fantasy IV, but it's the main theme to Final Fantasy. Note that this is not the main theme to Final Fantasy IV.
Correct.
That's a separate song.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, but
It's overdone, just like an opera. It's like a grand opera from like Germanic
it
history.
really
like,
is.
Got it.
I guess I kind of shot my wad a little early because I wanted to talk. This is where I wanted to talk about like
Going there with it?
like this is where I wanted to talk about
This was a PG show.
this hasn't been a PG show since like
I
forever.
definitely said fuck last time.
Yeah.
And there it is.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm rethinking my comments as we speak. But go ahead.
And explicit tag on this episode on iTunes.
Okay.
But
Beep it.
what was it? Now where was I going?
Sorry.
The idea of Nobuo Uematsu using this game to like shape the rest of the games. I don't know that it was in any prior game. I think this is the first one that had this main theme in it. I could be wrong.
I don't know.
I don't know. Don't quote me on that one. But what I can say is this arrangement is the arrangement for forever.
Yeah.
Like,
and it wouldn't have been possible on the NES.
yeah, if you think about it, this is Final Fantasy IV, and right after it, I'm gonna have, if we could play that next one. This is the same theme in Final Fantasy XII. You're gonna see that the only difference is instead of a sound font, I have a real orchestra.
Yeah.
Oh, and they added Beltree. They did add Beltree.
All right.
So,
Do you want to play that now?
yeah, could we?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's a full 8 games later. Now, granted, there are a couple of games where they're like, all right, we're going to take it in a new direction. Let's go ahead and do something more sci-fi with Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII. I don't think Final Fantasy IX had it in it because they were going for a much more reduced soundtrack.
Yeah.
And Final Fantasy 12 was just like, or Final Fantasy 10 rather, was just like.
Yeah, that was
like they just went off the deep end.
Around that, I don't remember exactly which game, but around that time, Uematsu stopped being like the composer for a lot of those games. Yeah,
so like with Final Fantasy 12 again, 8 games later, they're like, oh well, we need that like high fantasy sound again. What are we gonna do? Let's just rip everything off of Final Fantasy 4. And
that works well enough.
That's pretty much what happened.
Yeah.
So like talking in terms of like musical influence. Again, this game, again, like I said it before, I'll say it again, shaped pretty much everything.
Yeah, pretty much. In terms of the song itself, it works very well as an introduction to a fantasy adventure game. It has that grand, uplifting, let's get ready for an adventure kind of sound.
It's regal.
It's very regal. Regal. That's a very good word for it.
Yeah. Like I can see all the Regal theaters in my.
It's got Beltry in it. Anything with Beltry in it.
It's got Beltries. It's got timpani and stuff.
By the way, like kudos to them for being able to work timpani into a sound font for a game.
A lot
of all the games,
impressive.
Of all the sounds that you would need to cut, like, oh man, we're gonna need like horns, we're gonna need strings, we're gonna need flutes.
Our giant pinch drums are staying here. Those are important.
Like later on, you'll see he actually takes a kick and bass combo. This is actually something. I'm gonna save this.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Put a pin in that one.
Yeah, put a pin in this one.
Hey everybody, Drew here. I just wanted to take a quick break real quick and explain our new release schedule for Arcade Beat. As of this week, we're no longer going to be releasing them in batches. Instead, we're going to be going for more of a structured release schedule. So from here on out, every other Thursday, we're going to be putting out a new episode. So that means that the next episode will go live on June 29th, the next part of our Final Fantasy IV talk. That's pretty much it for now. As always, like, comment, subscribe if you like the video, and share it. Tell your friends. Exposure really helps us out. So thanks, and let's get back to it. All right, well, the next one on the track list is actually now the main theme to Final Fantasy IV.
Not to be confused with the prologue
or the prelude. Random encounters, am I right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. That is a really nice thematic melody. I really enjoy that. I think that that's played not just as like a showcase like theme track, but also it's also played in the overworld, right?
Mm-hmm,
and I think that they make it a lot more driving that way because it's supposed to drive action, which is something else that I'll continue to talk about throughout. But like this, it's very thematic and it carries over that like orchestral feel a bit, but it's also more driving. With here's the lob. Crack.
So Nobuo cites a lot of. He cites King Crimson, ELP, what's his name, Alan Parsons, Pink Floyd among his list of prog rock is among his list of influences. And it's funny because in this track he pulls the wool over our eyes. He eases us into this transition because we came from dum 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 and and then and he's like, now I want to do like you know, just like some like cool prog rock stuff, and I'm gonna do some things in odd time. He's like, wait, but if I do that immediately following the orchestral stuff, people are gonna be like, wait, what? And like their necks are gonna snap because of the whiplash, you know.
But there's a cool way that it gets introduced.
Yeah.
In a very subtle way.
You don't even really notice it.
Right. That was very, as you say, the prog rock, and there was some cutting edge prog rock that it reminds me of that people don't put into that world guys like Thomas Dolby, who
Yeah.
were taking the same thing and actually almost doing it on a subversive level, where not subversive, but it wasn't as obvious, but it was actually a lot more clever and in a lot of ways, a lot more creative.
Yeah. That's actually a perfect citation here for. I mean, he doesn't specifically say that Thomas Dolby influenced him, but you can hear that.
Yeah, absolutely.
right into it. It's
just
a Thomas
in the drum machine programming.
Yeah.
where some of the prog rock guys, a lot of the ones you mentioned, used real drums, but Dolby was very machine oriented and wasn't trying to pretend this is a real drummer.
Right.
It was like, no, this is a drum machine.
Yeah, this is a drum machine. It's gonna sound like a drum machine. So, like, I mean, it's cool in that, like I said in the previous track, like, wow, it took some cojones for him to like put timpani in the sound font, but that's because like the rest of the soundtrack uses this drum synth.
Yeah,
and I mean, even that snare was different from the snare that we heard in the Red Wings theme.
Yep.
Right.
You know, that was a crack rather than the military snare. So like here he's actually changing stuff. So you know, comparatively the orchestral percussion is used fairly infrequently, whereas the rock percussion is used a lot.
Yeah.
And now having that over the harp and the flute and everything that we already had established sort of eases us into that transition closely enough to like where like we don't even notice it. If we hadn't said anything about the drums in this one, you might not even have picked up that it's a different drum set.
Yeah.
But then that eases us into
Or that it's
when
a
we
kit in general.
yeah that it's a kit
yeah.
instead of like, you know, 6 people in the back of the orchestra.
Yeah.
You know, having a smoke while the rest of the orchestra does the work. Yeah, I'm a drummer. But that was a genius move, because when we get into things like the battle theme, like we're going to get into next, that's just straight up prog rock.
Yeah.
And if it was that without the main theme, we'd be like, wait, hold on, how are these from the same game?
Yeah.
Mhm.
But because of the main theme, they work.
I think it works out really well too, the way he uses instrumentation, because anytime he gets into using like a rock band formation, like when you hear like drum kit, or you hear like what's clearly electric bass and stuff like that, it's used in situations where it's promoting action, it's driving action. So it's like like when you're in a fight, or when you're supposed to be like climbing a mountain, or like you have a, you know, like some sort of ordeal to handle. It's supposed to drive your player action a lot of the time.
It's funny you say that, because Mount Ordeals uses either the kit or...
Oh, I know. That's why I paused. I was like, because that doesn't work. But no, but like it's player driven action that it's used for. It's a lot of the time, at least, used for like it's supposed to drive you to perform, to play, like to progress.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to. I mean, it's the main theme, so there's a lot of stuff to say.
Yeah, go on.
It's everywhere.
Sure.
Literally everywhere.
It's everywhere, which is because it's the overworld, but also because it is the most commonly varied theme.
Yeah. The actual theme of the theme is the
that melodic line is reused a lot. That main melodic line, and it's used it's used for what I would consider. I would consider this just to stick with my whole leitmotif thing. I would consider this the theme of emotional moments.
Okay.
Which is kind of a weird way to put it, but it's like it's one of those hard to describe in English, very easy to describe in music kind of things. If that makes any sense. But it's used all over the place. It's in the theme of sorrow later. It's in the ending theme. It's in the Land of Dwarves theme. There's material from it in the airship.
Mm-hmm.
It's just everywhere, and it's used all sorts of different ways, but it stands out in scenes where like in narrative scenes where it's like
you're supposed to have butterflies in your stomach.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So they use it a lot for that, and it's just gonna keep coming back. I'm just gonna we're gonna play tracks, and I'm gonna be like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? So like
it's Pollyanna.
It's Pollyanna, except that it's a little bit more. It's not. It doesn't remind you of home and your mom and your favorite food. It reminds you of
oh, I just killed a bunch of people in that village.
This is like the theme, like the theme of the theme. What specifically what Sully is talking about here is that he's right. It's used everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's every single time it's used, it's in a spot where Nobuo wants the hairs to stand up on your arm.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's specifically what it's there for.
Yeah.
It's the theme for Goosebumps moments. I guess
it's the feeling of adventure theme.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, in terms of like, you know, game feel and emotional connection, this song, it kind of takes you in a couple different places at once, which again goes back to the idea of, you know, Cecil and his character and the idea of duality and struggling with the light and dark natures of not just being a two-dimensional character. Yeah, and so I think that works really well in terms of being the theme to Final Fantasy IV. So, next up, I believe, is the battle theme.
let's get into a battle.
All right, so I know where you're gonna go with this, Alden. I'm just gonna insert myself because I have a shorter thing.
Okay.
But I wanted to quickly just compare that to the broader scope of what a battle theme is in Final Fantasy, and it the intro is like key Uematsu, like that. That bass line thing where there's always that quick arpeggio of some sort just flying upwards, and then it's always always a four like a 4 count, like 1 2 3 full step down, 1 2, you know, and it's in this case it's actually the minor tonic and the 7.
It's actually in let me think. Let me do some quick thought here.
1 through 6 and 9 all use that intro.
1 through 6, 9, and 10. 10 uses a variation.
Yeah.
So in 1 through 6 and 9, you literally have and then whatever. In 10, you don't have the you don't have the rhythm.
Yeah.
You do have the bum bum bum. Bum bum bum.
It's the same interval. Yeah,
he really loves that step down, and uses it everywhere.
What it does is it throws you into first it disorients you with something quickly, and then it throws you into whatever minor mode he's decided to make that battle theme in.
Yeah.
Because it gives you the root.
You immediately identify.
It gives you the root, and then it gives you a step down, which is a major 7 in that case, because it's usually a minor mode of some sort. And so it I guess it just sets you, and that becomes like the standard for like now a battle's happening.
Yeah.
It's very jarring, very quick, and now you know you're in a battle, and now your mindset is set.
Yeah, well, because mechanically, if you think about it, you're going from a exploratory game to a quick like thing that in all the games where that is used, with the exception of 10, it's an active time battle, meaning you have like a bar that fills up, and you have to like choose your thing quickly because the bad guys are going to start whacking you.
Yeah.
So you have to like shift from exploratory to I need to make decisions now.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly. So
driving action.
Yeah, this kind of like really helps you. Yeah.
Yeah. And important to note as well, this is a random encounter game, which means that this will happen suddenly and without warning. So that quick arpeggio at the beginning,
it's jarring. It wakes you up.
Yeah.
It's
like, whoa! All right, it's go time.
I do also, on the same lines of comparing it to others, this is one of 2 battle themes in the entirety of Final Fantasy that teeters into a major mode at all. Like barely. It just kind of hints at it, but it doesn't ever, yeah. It kind of is like, hey, maybe F major, no. But it's they're always in a minor mode for. I mean that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
bad guys are minor.
Yeah.
Bad guys are bad.
Yeah.
I just thought it was kind of neat that it almost makes it blend in with like some of the Regal themes a little better. I think to get that hint of F major, and that's probably what he was going for. But I don't really know for sure.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was an interesting fact. Yeah.
From a sound font perspective, I guess, we're full on like band rather than orchestra. We're full. Like we have trumpets that as far as into orchestra as we get this entire thing, because with the strings, we can also picture a keyboard player doing that. One of the things that I want to like just highlight here that I thought was really cool, and this really doesn't really have anything to do with anything, aside from the fact that you can hear Uematsu trying to make his sound font sound like it's being performed. So you have ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na in the bass. If you listen to the bass, you have a long hit and then a short hit. It is do that, do that, do that, do that. So it's like do 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 do, but he's doing octaves with a long hit on the low octave or the low hit or the low note and a short hit on the high note. He's trying to emulate slap bass there.
Yeah, like a slap pop situation.
Yeah. You're doing a slap pop situation where that's how you're doing the run up and down the fretboard. I just wanted to highlight that because he'll do that a couple of times here. Unfortunately, I can't really say that becomes a new Uematsuism, because as soon as 6 is done, we're now in the area where he's like, well, I could just use whatever synths I want, or I can get a real orchestra to do it.
Yeah.
So, that's something that came too little too late, but like he really does it a lot here, where he'll play with the durations of notes, he'll play with the pitch, not pitch, the velocity of a note to emulate stuff. Like later on, you're gonna hear him really jam on the velocity of the hi-hat to emulate a Viennese waltz beat. So tat 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 tat, as opposed to tat 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 tat.
Right.
So
he does in a third.
Yeah.
Interesting.
One thing that I thought was really cool about that I think will come back. This is the first really good example of it, though. In this, it definitely happens in most battle themes in this game. Is that it sounds like he wanted to keep that like driving intent going on. It is in common time, but it's very interesting the way a lot of the voices use emphasis to make it sound really offbeat and everything without the drums and bass getting you out of that driving motion. So there's a lot of just cool like emphasis thrown in on offbeats and stuff like that in a lot of the
and he does that
instruments. Yeah.
Like it's interesting that he does that, and again, you're right, this is in common time. Later on he will do stuff that's not in common time, and he'll do stuff that's actually in like a complex time. He'll start like putting different time signatures one measure after the other and alternate between them because he's insane. But you have to like realize how hard that was to do at the time, because he was composing music. I'm sure he was writing the music as he was creating it, but at some point he was going to have to like program that.
Yep.
He had to like it's not like he can just go into it. He didn't have a piano roll like we have a piano roll for MIDI. He had a series of MIDI, and he actually had to say like, okay, 0 1 0 1, or like do it in hex or whatever he was going to do. But it was like code. He was coding.
Yeah.
So just a testament to like how difficult that is, like and how difficult it is to do that and be like, okay, well now I want to think of this not in 4/4. I need 15 16th notes. So let's do the math on that.
Yeah, I think that's what he kind of starts to hint at here, because a lot of the like
voices that are in it for flair or melody are doing stuff like that in this. It's just that he's trying to keep, I feel like he's trying to keep that like driving force to keep you going, that like constant chugga 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 chugga, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of like a thematic standpoint, this track works very well as your generic bad guy fight music, because it has a very positive feel to it. Like, it's driving, it's action packed. It doesn't feel super tense like the boss music is gonna feel. It definitely feels like these are enemies that are in your way, and it's time to just wipe the floor with them.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is actually like the de facto fight theme.
yeah, this is,
You know, this is like this is what made it. So for anyone who doesn't realize, this song made its way into Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the movie.
This is
Like-
the quote-unquote Final Fantasy song that he learns on bass
Yeah.
in the beginning of the movie.
So it's like, this is the one that like a lot of people, I would argue, regard as like the de facto fight theme. Like, yeah, the other ones are good, but this is the one.
Yeah.
This is it.
All right, well, now that we have fought some mooks and assuredly wiped the floor with them, let's listen to the fanfare.
you leveled up.
So
Yay.
so for 10 games, you hear a derivative of this, and it
11.
never gets old.
No.
11?
They use it in 11 as the level up
Oh, okay,
jingle.
cool.
And it strikes again. You say his influence of like prog rock. It sounds like ELP. I mean, it's got that that Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Yeah, this is done on a
thing,
Moog, like
Yeah.
one big wall unit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just in the way it's done and in the way it uses synths to emulate horns, it's got that feel, and it's got that nod to that big prog rock sound and that uplifting, like, yeah, we did it sound,
Yeah, I don't know that there's really a whole lot more to say on that
It's
one.
just-
I just had to
it's
include
there.
it because
We have it.
it's
You can't
so
not, yeah.
yeah, it's so very Final
I can't
Fantasy.
wait to get to the Choco.
Chocobo.
That's it.
Well, then
yeah.
let's dive right into Chocobo.
This is another we need to have.
This is another I had to because it's in every Final Fantasy.
Very interesting.
Okay,
Chocobo.
so
Chocobo.
Chocobos. Anybody who's not aware, Chocobos are a staple of the Final Fantasy series. They are basically yellow ostriches with like more feathers.
Yeah, they're big goofy birds
Big-
that you can ride.
Interesting.
It's your
Sometimes you race them. It's great.
Sometimes you race them. In most of the games, you use them as a transportation method to get around the map.
It's like
a
And
bit
again,
faster.
as a nod to another musical style that may not be apparent, but is apparent to me because I'm a fan. There's a nod here to Frank Zappa,
I was the
where you have a very complex musical melody that is emulated by xylophone, marimba, guitar, a bunch of those orchestral instruments that Frank made very common and very popular in his style of music. But even the complexity of the melody line, where it's not just a simple, it's complex. And again, to me it's a nod to that style of music that was also popular in the prog rock era, and that's like the Zappas of the world.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
experimental rocks and stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's got the same timbre as any one of those. We have the drum kit, we have the bass, we have the keyboard horn, we have the xylo, the marimba or what have you.
Yeah.
Like it definitely fits there. And the composition of like the song, you have the driving rock kit like beat, and then you have this bass player who Like, this bass player is too excited to be in the song right now. Like, he's like, boom, boo doo doo doo. Like, they got some funk guy doing, like, like slaps and pops and everything like that. Like, you can hear it again. Here, I'm using these short, very high-pitched things as my slaps and everything like that. But, like, had this been, dare I say, like, Earthbound, or had this been, like Lufia or something like that, that bass would be just like chord, maybe fifth,
Yeah.
maybe seventh, but it'd be like those three notes, in some
He didn't care how bad your TV speakers were. He was trying.
yeah, exactly. He's like, you're gonna hear this funky bass line. Like,
This is music for the ages.
yeah. So
I wanted to add that being that this track is kind of a goofy,
Big goofy
yeah,
bird.
just kind of goofy thing shoved in there in the middle of this game. That use of mallets is going to come back. It seems to be.
you know precisely the track you're talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So like the mallets are used when things are getting a little goofy. Like that's gonna come back.
That's the thing.
So keep your ears open for more mallets, because that's when you know there's some weird shit going on.
Yep.
Mallets are the leitmotif for weird.
Yes.
Yep. Frank thought so too.
All right, well, next up is Into the Darkness.
Fun fact, that is the first thing that we've heard that's not in Common Time. We have a waltz for the cave dungeon theme.
Yeah.
And
A Viennese waltz.
yeah, it's kind of fun. It's still kind of, it's nothing crazy, but it's different and it's nice. What I thought was really cool along the lines of just kind of like trying to introduce you to that like off time stuff is with those like juxtaposing tritones that appear. He's creating he's using a hemiola, which is when you try and throw.
Excuse me.
What? What?
Kiss your mother with that mouth.
But it's so like it's in 3 time, but you make it you emphasize it so it sounds like it's in 6 instead. So instead of getting it's kind of weird. It's almost like
You're
what
thinking
triplets
1
would-
and 2 and 3 and as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I thought that was really cool. I also thought it was kind of I don't know why it worked, but it was kind of goofy that the cave dungeon theme is a waltz, but it works.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, it seems odd that something like Into the Darkness by the texture of it and the fact that it is again in a 3, as they say, it doesn't feel that dark. It's
It almost feels
we're happily going into the darkness.
It feels kind of like a classical horror movie, like the old Dracula stories and stuff, where like you're going to visit some creepy Victorian castle kind of thing.
To put a little bit of context here, thematically, when we're looking at the level itself and what the level is supposed to be, they were doing a less dark and evil and more misty, and think of like a misty cave or something like that. You actually fight the boss in there is a mist dragon, so it's a dragon entirely made out of like mist and fog, and it actually turns into fog at one point, and you can't hit it. But like they're doing like more the wispy kind of thing than the this is evil kind of thing.
Yeah. One other fun fact about that I I like to use, I like to bring up just because it's really helpful in establishing the overarching Final Fantasy sound going forward. It's subtle little things like this that appear all over the place that really make this work. It's that harp arpeggio in the background is varied content from the prelude, which is what appears in like all of the Final Fantasy games. And it's even some of the same chords. It's just kind of it's sort of a transposed and expanded version. It's put into a minor mode and expanded a little bit. Yeah, that harp, I don't even want to say harp, that the arpeggio, the idea of having a arpeggio just go almost like the full length of an 88 key keyboard, that is everywhere in Final Fantasy. That like happens so often in so many different styles for so many different reasons. Like it's just like I almost feel like that's Nobuo's stamp of Final Fantasy. Like this is the Final Fantasy stamp, because like Lufia doesn't have that. Yeah. Like Earthbound doesn't have that. Other RPGs, they don't have that. The arpeggio, this is a Final Fantasy RPG. Yeah. This is for real. That's the good stuff. This is that's like the Coke's like signature red label. Yeah. There we go.
All right. I think next up is, so we're in the cave in the caves in the darkness, and it's time to get into a little bit more of a dramatic battle. It's fight 2. Dramatic battle. Dramatic. Yes. So, and if I recall correctly, that's the song that they use for the majority of the boss fights that don't have their own individual themes.
Yeah, it's like generic boss fight.
Yeah.
And it sounds it. It's got that, classic "I'm fighting now" sound. Yeah. It's be careful, the stuff coming in from all angles. Shoot wildly. Yeah. Get out of my way, quick. It's got that whole thing.
Great kid, don't get cocky.
It is a much more tense variation of that first one. Yeah. It's definitely driven. It keeps that honestly, it makes a more driving drum beat, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is in fact faster.
Yes, yeah. Even like the intro, or like the whole thing is faster. That like jarring arpeggio is almost just kind of like a slide in this. Just whoop. And then it adds other rhythmic elements. Those like trombones add like kind of a agitated rhythm to it.
Yeah. It's funny, the use of non-percussion instruments as percussion that he does in this one is, well, it's prevalent in this one, but he does this a lot. yeah the thing again, he does this a lot, but like if you listen to the bass line in the A part, what I'm going to call the A part of this is do 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 do. But what winds up happening, because most of what he's playing, like most of it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, nice and easy, right? Yeah. But most of that is up on the high end. The only low things that you get is bum 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 bum. So on 1, 2, and 3, you have dun 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 juxtaposed with the dun 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 ba ba bum dun 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 ba ba bum.
Yeah.
And you get this like nice little rhythm on top of the that the drums are doing. So, it's, I don't know.
It's driving and jarring at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is kind of great.
You have like 3 different rhythms all meshing together. They do mesh well rhythmically, but because it's all 3 different things, it's like kind of like brings you in 3 different places.
Yep.
So.
Okay. Well, the next track on the list, and by and large, this is just going off of the soundtrack order list. So next up is Rydia's theme. Yeah, so
Pretty.
as we mentioned earlier, very early on in the game, Cecil has misgivings about his job and his orders, and he voices those concerns to his king, and as punishment, he has to deliver a parcel to this town. And when he gets there, he finds that it was actually a tarp, and everything explodes. It's a trap.
Yeah.
But yeah, everything just goes crazy. The whole town it's a tarp.
So they can cover the rain's coming.
Hey, why would you give us this?
It's from the king.
Towns away to bring you a tarp.
I mean, I was planning on painting my house.
So thanks, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So and Rydia is the sole survivor of that town, and she blames Cecil for everything that happened.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't know what was going to happen, but I mean, he also feels like it's his responsibility. But she actually ends up joining your party. She is a summoner. I think both times you get her.
No, she is actually unable to summon in the very beginning. She
That's
can
right.
do some base black magic, but she never learns fire
Okay.
until later on.
Well,
Okay.
she's a child when you meet her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you meet her as a child, and then she like falls into a chasm or something. She leaves your party.
Yeah,
I forget exactly how.
Snatches her up. She winds up in Mysidia.
Yeah.
And time there goes differently. No, not
Yeah.
Mysidia.
No,
the
it's
land of the summons.
Land of the
whatever it is.
Eidolons.
They're not Eidolons, but yeah.
I thought that's what they were called in this
That's
game.
6.
They're Eidolons in a lot of games.
Not in this one. Man.
No wonder kids are so darn depressed. This stuff is like killing like all kinds of towns.
There's a lot of people die in this game. This
This isn't even the worst part.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Jeepers.
And
This game is very Dragon Ball Z-esque in that way, in that a lot of people die, and then a lot of people come back for wondrous magical reasons, and then some people don't, and like
it even it suffers from like opposite Dragon Ball Z syndrome.
Yeah.
Where like each time the person dies, it's more and more depressing.
yeah.
yeah.
Like in this one, we don't know anybody in the town.
Can we
Just
play
wait.
it now?
But
So I was gonna say this is a great, another great example of my leitmotif thing. It's pretty standard to have a character theme, but I think it's again used very well. I think it helps a lot when she comes back as an adult, because that's kind of like a new person to your eyes in a sense.
Yeah, she's basically a different character.
Yeah, so to have that theme return kind of reminds you of who it was before, and it attaches that old character to that new one. And it puts you in the right mindset of like, oh, that's the person from before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you may not have known.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In theming, it actually kind of, in some ways, I think tells the story of Rydia all throughout the one song. Like, if you think about it, it's a sad tune, or, you know, it's sheepish, it's quiet.
Yeah.
When you meet her, she's afraid, and you literally just bombed her entire town. So, one of the things they do game mechanic-wise is, she's a black mage, she has access to black magic, but she never learns the fire spell, because she's terrified of fire.
Yeah.
There's a story event later where she learns it because she has to get over her fear. But like, she's timid and afraid. She's a child with crazy ass powers, but like, she's a child.
Right.
So you have this like sheepish thing, but then also it reflects her later self, where you have this this tonicization at the very end, right before the loop, where like I pointed it out to you, and I don't know how I'm gonna describe this one, but it's like yeah,
they changed the harmonic structure under it. Yeah,
right. Yeah, they tonicize it, and what it does is it almost gives this more assured feel to it. It gives more of a courageous feel.
It's the same melody being repeated with like more, I guess more confidence coming underneath it. I guess I'm feeling something like that.
Yeah. So you have this like underlying confidence where it just for a second, and then it goes right back into the loop. But that almost sort of tells later, when she has learned how to control her powers, when she learned who she is, when she's, you know, sure of herself and comes back to say, "I'm ready to help you save the world now." You get a little bit of that too. So it's I think a very good job that Nobuo did in capturing both characters, because they're vastly different.
Yeah.
In one track.
Agreed. Okay, so the next track on the list is
This should be uplifting.
Cry in Sorrow.
It is kind of a nice moment when this happens, though, isn't it? It's a positive moment.
Good.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to click that subscribe button to stay current on all things Duplay. If you really like us, why not support us on GameWiz? We've got lots of awesome rewards for our subscribers, including early access to our videos and exclusive content. Thanks. Catch you guys next time.